Okay. I am a former professional soccer player, and I played in Serbia, Greece, France, Denmark, Poland, Saudi Arabia, and in the MLS, and with the U.S. national team. And I negotiated three of my contracts. Okay. And I think that young soccer players go into contract negotiations blindsided often, and sort of with a lack of understanding of how contracts work. And they put all of their trust in a lawyer um, or an agent, and don't really have a sense of what information is being shared, and how that negotiation is taking place, and what the outcomes of that negotiation are outside of what the player is getting. So I wanted to just share a little bit of my experience, and I'm not going to go into everything, but I wanted to share a little bit of my experience with contract negotiation, and also share a few insights into some of your options that you'll have. So these will be things you can ask your agent, you can ask your lawyer, or if you're negotiating your own club, you can just think about it on your own. So number one, when negotiating a contract, one of the most important things is take your time. Do not rush through the process because you're excited. When a club wants you, emotions are high. You feel great. You're calling people. You're like you're on cloud nine. But you have to remain sober and take your time. Okay? Why? Because if you rush, you might miss details. You might not give the people supporting you, you know, enough time to do their due diligence. But also, if an agent's negotiating for you, you might not have enough time, or be sort of focused enough to ask them the right questions to make sure they're doing the best negotiation possible for you. So often agents want to, they try to be fair with clubs, or they try not to push. It's important to be fair, but agents try not to push hard because they want to do additional business with that club. So they might not push and get you what they might have if you don't know what's going on, and if you're not pushing them. So again, taking your time is number one. Number two, you have to get support. Okay, what that means is if you're negotiating your contract by yourself, you want a lawyer as a consultant. Okay, if you have an agent negotiating for you, you still want another lawyer as a consultant. You have to have the ability to keep everyone accountable and to cover your blind spots. No one person is going to know everything. No one person is going to think of everything. So make sure you get support, some form of consultation. Number three, do the math. Okay? If you negotiate a deal for, let's say, 30,000 euros a month, and you don't factor in taxes, you don't factor in whether or not the club's paying for your apartment or your car, you don't calculate the cost of gas, the cost of insurance, and you don't calculate the cost of just daily living, right? Food costs, etc. The cost of internet, the cost of television. If you don't calculate those things, you will find yourself in a situation where you are unhappy because you are saving way less than you anticipated. So you have to do the math, and that's going to inform how you negotiate. Okay, so I'll give you an example, but before I do that, the next thing you have to do, and I've actually seen players skip this step, and I've actually seen agents skip this step. They just accept what the club gives them. You have to create a term sheet. A term sheet explicitly lays out, explicitly defines what the club expects from you and what you expect from the club. And I'm going to give you an example of a term sheet. This is from my club in France. Okay, I'm going to cover up the money here. Hold on, see if I can do that. Okay. This is a term sheet. There you go. In French, it's called a protocole d'accord. Okay. So essentially, what a term sheet does is like I told you, it lists it sort of outlines what you expect from the club and what the club expects from you. So in my term sheet in France, it said they were gonna make my contract a professional contract. So I had a pro contract with the team, with the club. And they were on the hook for a 2-year professional contract. So the duration, 2 seasons. They were on the hook to pay me X amount, gross, okay, and then they were also on the hook for paying for my house, okay. But just keep in mind that the salary was X amount gross, which means taxes would be taken out. So I couldn't sort of without looking at the tax code, you're unable to kind of know where you'll end up when it comes to a net salary. And then once you have that net salary, that's when you sort of deduct everything else that's not covered by them. So in this situation, I didn't have to pay for my house. So that housing cost is not deducted from my net, but my car was, insurance for my car, gasoline, food, all those other things are deducted from my net salary. But in the term sheet, my salary was negotiated in gross. In French, it's brut. Okay? Next, we're going to move over to my contract from Saudi Arabia. This is the Arabic version of my contract. And I'm going to now grab the English translation. And what I recommend is always having contracts translated and notarized. Okay? If it's a poor translation, the meaning might be different. So make sure it's an official translation so that the English is perfect, so you understand it perfectly. Okay? My contract in Saudi Arabia, translated into English. And we had a term sheet for this. And again, I negotiated this contract. So we had a term sheet, and I had them pay for. I had the total amount that I was gonna get. So I negotiated a net contract, which is easy because they have no income tax, but a net contract. And within that contract, my objective was to get 60 to 70% of my contract up front, because in Saudi Arabia they have all the money in the world, but sometimes if your team's not playing well, maybe they won't. Sometimes they won't pay your salary. So I had heard those stories. And what I did was I structured a deal that allowed me to get 60 to 70% of the money up front, plus a car, plus an apartment. So what I had to do was I sacrificed a little bit of my bonus structure, the bonuses that I would have negotiated. So I got goal bonus, assist bonus, and team bonuses. So I went light on the bonuses, but heavy on the sign-on fees. So I think I had like a 50% or 40% sign-on fee up front, and then 2 to 3 months later, I think it was 3 months later, I had I think another 30% sign-on fee. So I was able to front load to get 60 to 70% of my money up front, and then it was like if anything else happened, it was okay because I had the bulk of my money. So just keep that in mind when you go to certain countries that might have a little bit of a reputation of not paying sometimes. You have to try and get most of your money up front. It can be really lucrative. It can be extremely lucrative, but you have to sort of manage the risk of the climate sometimes and the culture sometimes, okay? The other thing I negotiated in Saudi Arabia was I negotiated flights. I negotiated flights for my family. I negotiated visas for my family, and I negotiated food. So that was a good negotiation. The next contract I want to point a few things out in is my contract in Denmark, and this was translated into English, and the Danes actually speak better English than most of us, so it wasn't too difficult. All right, so in Denmark, they have a national, sort of a federal rule, which says that everyone has to have vacation time. And what they do is they take a percentage of everyone's salary and they put it into like a forced savings account, and they give that back to the citizens at during vacation time. So what I did, I'm sorry. So what I had was I had this baked into my contract. So a certain amount of my salary was taken every month. They put it into a savings account, and I got that money back over the holiday. Okay, but in actuality, what it is you get paid for 11 or 10 or 11 months out of the year, and basically what that does is it just covers that month of salary that's missed. That's essentially how it works. So yeah, that's essentially how it works. So you get paid for a month of not doing anything technically. Rules are a little bit different. The next thing that's really important is this clause says that if the team I was on got relegated, I would have the right to leave or stay. Okay? If the team was relegated, I could have stayed or gone. And what happens to a lot of players is they don't have a clause like this. So their team goes from first division to second division, or second division to third, or all the way on down, and they might have options in other places. And because they don't have the ability to leave, it becomes problematic because the existing club wants to keep them so that they can help them go back up to the higher division, and the player wants to leave. So it creates a lot of turmoil. So get this clause in your contract. Keep it in mind. All right? Next, this is my translated contract in Poland, or from Poland, in the extra class in Poland. And this negotiation was pretty interesting because what I did was I negotiated a certain salary, but I went very light on my sign-on fee, and I went crazy with my bonus structure. So I had a bonus for being in the team sheet 10 times, stepping on the field 10 times. I had a bonus for playing a full game, playing 10 consecutive games. I had a bonus for goals, and a certain amount of goals. I had a bonus for assists and a certain number of assists. I was involved in the team bonuses. I was involved, and those team bonuses were winning league games and winning cup games. So I had and the numbers were really good. So I had a pretty fat bonus structure, and so that's another way to build a contract. So in Saudi Arabia, my main concern was getting most of my money up front in case anything happened. In Poland, which has a stable currency and the league is good, in Poland my concern was trying to make even more, as much money as possible, just through incentivizing performance. So again, two ways to manage a contract based on the objectives. And before I finish up, and again, this is just a brief overview, or a brief sort of description of some of the things that I've experienced, and I can go into much greater detail. But keep this in mind, okay? This is a document that says that I was free to leave this club when my contract was over, and that there was no financial requirement. So that means a club would not need to pay to have my contract, or to have my player card transferred from their club to the next. So there'd be no fee that takes place. And it's always helpful to get this document before you leave a club. So every club I left, I always got this document. I got a similar type of document to this one drawn up, even if I didn't need it. Okay, it's just a paper trail to show that you don't owe anything, or your previous club doesn't owe anyone. So, just an important thing to have and to note. But again, I can go into much greater detail. There's a lot more to discuss. If anyone wants to reach out and talk a little more, I'm fine with that. I'll put my information in the description, but my email is jeremiah@whitesportventures.com. I hope this was helpful and at least get some of you thinking about how you're going to approach your next contract, or I hope that it gives you guys some additional questions to ask an agent or a lawyer. So if you're interested in talking more, reach out. And if not, I hope this helped you. All right, take care.